So our next speaker is Jessica Azulay, and she's the program director of the Alliance for a Green Economy. The acronym is AGREE, AGREE, a coalition of grassroots organizations working together for a carbon-free, nuclear-free New York. Originally, she's from West Virginia, but Jessica there witnessed the ongoing destruction of her state's natural beauty and the fresh water by mountaintop removal for coal mining and other dirty industries, as well as seeing the people's inspiring struggle against these industries to protect their homeland and their state. In her work, Jessica raised awareness of the threats of fossil fuel and nuclear power and promotes a full transition to a renewable economy. Jessica is one of the first people to call attention to the problems with New York State's draft energy plan, leading the call for citizen scientists like yourselves to write comments and become involved in a real plan to switch to renewables. Jessica, welcome.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. And I want to first just thank Tony Ingraffea and the co-authors of the Jacobson Plan that he just described for their contributions that they have made to helping people understand that we do have the renewable resources in New York to replace dirty and dangerous fossil fuels and nuclear power. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with environmentalists who don't yet believe themselves that a 100% renewable energy system is actually possible. And why would they? The myths and the propaganda that we are up against are very powerful, so powerful that we ourselves sometimes believe them. So studies like the one you just heard about are a critical tool in our struggle for sustainable energy. And I also want to just say that they are not alone in saying that this is technically feasible. In 2007, Arjun Makhijani of the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research, it's also known as EAR, published a book called Carbon Free and Nuclear Free. It's a roadmap for US energy policy. And I read this book in 2011, and it changed my life and made me a more effective activist. I just started working with the Alliance for a Green Economy, and I was advocating for a full phase out of nuclear power in New York and constantly having these mind-numbing conversations with people about what was worse, nuclear power or coal. Has anyone had one of these conversations before? You tell someone how horrible fracking is or nuclear or coal, and they come back at you with, well, the alternative is worse. When I read this book by Dr. Makhijani, it was the first time that I went from hoping we didn't have to make these terrible choices to really understanding for real that we can leave all of these bad fuels behind. So now when someone tells me that coal is worse than nuclear, I tell them they're welcome to pick their poison, but I'm advocating for neither because I know we can have coal-free, gas-free, oil-free, and nuclear-free energy system in New York State and in the United States. And the Institute for Energy and Environmental Research has done some other statewide studies as well, which I put on the slide. And you can find all of their research at www.ieer.org. And I encourage you to check that out as you're checking out the Solutions Project as well. They take different approaches, and I think they're very complementary. So before I get into talking about the energy plan and some of the policy for New York, I want to say that I want to talk a little bit about some commonalities and common themes in these studies, because I think they're really important. All of these different studies take different approaches to the energy mix and what amounts of what kind of energy they might rely on and how they treat storage. They all have strengths and weaknesses. But together, they have some commonalities, and they start to show a picture of what we're going for, and we can take away some basic concepts that help us understand what the path forward looks like. So I just pulled out some basic things. Basically, energy efficiency and conservation is first. This is the cheapest way to get to a renewable energy system. It's the thing we should be doing first. Then we need to electrify everything that we can. We have to take our cars, make them electric. We have to electrify space heating, water heating, kitchen ranges, pretty much everything that we use natural gas or oil for. We need to make it electric, and then we have to supply that the energy for those appliances and transportation and vehicles with renewable energy. And it should be a mix of renewable energy, hopefully complementary renewable sources that for instance, when the sun shines, maybe the wind doesn't blow as hard, but then at night the wind is blowing harder. So we try to find things that complement each other. And the mix will depend a lot on the geography of the state that we're looking at, the region, and also environmental concerns, social concerns. It'll be different. And it should be decided by us. And then fill in the gaps with storage, demand response, and other sources that you can ramp up and down very rapidly to fill in those gaps that sometimes come unexpectedly. We don't have control over the intermittency of renewable energy. And I just have a slide here that I wanted to put in here. This is from the Renewable Minnesota model that sort of demonstrates this basic concept. So the red line, this isn't real. This isn't actually what Minnesota's energy mix looks like. It's a model that EAR did. They took actual weather data from some places in Minnesota, and they were able to see not just where the renewable resources were in the state, but also get a sense of when the wind was blowing and the sun was shining. So the red line, the red squiggly line, that's demand. And this is for 2 weeks in Minnesota. One's a winter week and one's a summer week. So the red line is demand. That's what you're trying to meet. The yellow bumps are solar. And this was kind of real-time data for those 2 weeks that they modeled. The green is wind. And the red, sort of down below, that's storage. They're putting energy into storage when the wind basically creates more energy than there is demand. And then the purple is where they're filling in the gaps with storage. So you can see that part of the renewable energy system, what we're going for is to have a combination of renewables and then fill in these gaps with storage. And this requires us to rethink baseload a little bit. It requires us to rethink how we layer different generation sources to meet our demand. So right now, in our current system, we have this baseload of coal and nuclear. These are sources that are always on, and they're sort of this steady, except when they're refueling or there's a safety incident at a nuclear power plant, we go down to zero. But they're generally consistent. And then as demand goes up, we put in things that we do have control over, like gas and hydro to meet the demand. So in our current system, we have this base load of coal and nuclear, that's the given. In a renewable energy system, our base load, our givens are wind and solar, and those are not steady. They kind of move. But that's the given. Those are the sources we want to use all the time when we have them and when we can. And then we need to match them with things that we do have control over and that we can ramp up and down very fast. And that's where your storage and possibly hydro come in. And the reason I'm going into so much detail here is because the way the future energy grid looks has some policy implications. For instance, right now we're hearing from nuclear operators who are losing money in the current system, partly because they can't respond easily to variations in wind energy. And so they're calling for subsidies. They want to be rewarded for being baseload generators. And they're challenging subsidies for renewables because they're saying renewables are creating this artificial and broken energy market. So this slide indicates why we should not believe that argument and why we shouldn't be giving subsidies to nuclear power. We don't need this old version of baseload, and what we should be subsidizing are batteries and storage technologies that can ramp up and down very fast to respond to the variations in renewables. So now I want to talk about another energy plan, our friendly draft New York State energy plan, which was released in January. And it doesn't set a goal of 100% renewable energy, but it does set a goal of 80% greenhouse gas reductions by 2050. So conceptually, we might expect to see some of these same concepts I've been talking about: maximizing energy efficiency, electrifying transportation, home heating, building massive amounts of renewable energy, and then planning for complementary storage. And there's still time to comment on the plan. The deadline is April 30th. We're actually pushing very hard for an extended deadline for some reasons I'll talk about in a minute. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the plan, but I think all of you got a packet when you came in that has information about how to comment, and there's a lot of talking points and stuff in there. So I encourage you to check that out. Comment as many times as you want. If you've already commented, comment again. So what does the plan say about energy efficiency? New York currently has in place an energy efficiency portfolio standard. This is a set of policies and subsidies that are designed to meet a goal of 15% energy reductions by 2015. The good news is the energy plan instructs the Department of Public Service to improve upon and expand this energy efficiency portfolio standard through 2020. But the bad news is it doesn't identify any new percentage goal for 2020. So we don't really know, are they going to just extend? They're not actually looking to meet that 2015 goal. We don't think they're going to meet it. So are they just going to push the goal off further to 2020, or are they going to set a more aggressive target? And because the plan is instructing the Department of Public Service to take that on, even after the draft energy plan is finalized, we can still engage in this struggle over what the energy efficiency is going to look like in the state and how much it's going to be ramped up, and because there will be proceedings at the Public Service Commission, and we'll need to get involved in those. There's also this, even more concerning, is the state, as part of the energy planning process, commissioned a study by Optimal Energy on energy efficiency and renewable potential in New York. They wanted to see, what's possible. And there are footnotes in the draft energy plan that refer to this study, and there's some data cited from the study in the energy plan, but we can't see this study. It hasn't been publicly released, and this is the main reason why we're asking for an extension to the public comment period. We're basically saying, we need to see this study, we need to be able to look at the methodology behind it and really look at the details so we can comment on it as part of our comments on the energy plan. But this is a table that cites data from this study, and it basically says, the study says, we have economic efficiency potential of 43% in electricity, in the electricity sector by 2030. That means, we have the potential, they say, to reduce our energy use by 43% as compared to the projections in the plan by 2030. But then they have this other thing called achievable potential, which they say is 20%. And they said that's estimated to be realistically achievable through a well-designed portfolio of effectively administered efficiency programs. They don't go into any detail about what that portfolio looks like. And to me, this is sort of a backwards way of doing it. You would want to figure out what your potential is and then design programs and a portfolio to actually meet that potential, especially because this is sort of the first step and this is the cheapest way to get ourselves going on the renewable energy plan. So if you have some free time, call NYSERDA and tell them to release this plan and ask them to extend the comment period so that we can sort of raise a stink about this. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about what the plan says about electrifying everything. So there is a little bit about more charging stations for electric vehicles and trying to get electric vehicles going in the state, but not very much planning for electric vehicles. And then on the space heating side, there's this Initiative 9, which I put up here, which basically is promoting the conversion in space heating from oil to natural gas. Not from oil to efficient electric systems and geothermal and solar thermal, but oil to gas. And this is something that everyone should comment about in the plan. This is totally the wrong direction. If we know we need to make space heating electric, we shouldn't be investing. People shouldn't be investing in this in their homes, putting in furnaces to burn natural gas. There is another part of that initiative that suggests that maybe NYSERDA will start subsidizing efficient electric systems and geothermal like they're not now. But it's not very clear, but it gives me a little hope on that part. And then I'll just quickly talk about what it says about a mix of renewables. So like the energy efficiency portfolio standard, we also have a renewable portfolio standard in the state. The goal is 30% renewable energy by 2015. We're not on track to meet that goal. It does commit to expanding and improving the renewable portfolio standard, this time through 2025. But again, it doesn't set a target. It doesn't set a mix. It doesn't say how much. And it doesn't provide strategies for meeting the current goal. So this is a key weakness in the plan. And then also, I talked about that potential study. The potential study is also for renewable energy. And so there's a chart in the plan where it doesn't really say what our raw potential for renewable energy is in the state. Instead, it talks about bounded technical potential, which is based on a consideration of primary physical, social, and technological factors at play. And as you can see, it says that our bounded technical potential for renewables is 38% by 2030. So when you contrast that with what Tony just put out here and what the other research that we've seen, this is totally ridiculous. And we can't see how they came to this number. So again, we need to get this document released so we can comment on it. And now, before I close, I want to talk just quickly about nuclear projections in the energy plan. So this is a chart that shows some projections. This is sort of their status quo projection. If we don't do anything, this is what energy will look like in the state. And you'll see that for nuclear, it goes up a little bit pretty soon, and then it stays steady through 2020. But this is imaginary, actually. These are the nuclear reactors in New York. You'll see in our region we have 9 Mile Point, Fitzpatrick, and Ginna. And I also put on here the retirement schedule. This is just these plants coming to the end of their lives, and you'll see that Ginna and 9 Mile Point 1, which are 2 of the oldest reactors in the country, are going to close in 2029. So this idea that nuclear is going to stay really high up through 2030 doesn't make any sense. And we also, Fitzpatrick and Ginna in our region are projected to be losing money from now until 2016. And there's a lot of speculation that these plants might close. It's actually really dangerous when nuclear plants lose money. The companies might start cutting costs. We're already seeing costs being cut at Fitzpatrick, workers being laid off, and equipment not getting fixed. So we do hope they close very early. And we would hope to see in the energy plan some talk about the potential of early retirement in nuclear and some planning for that so that we can replace them with renewables and energy efficiency. And there's no acknowledgement of that in the plan. And this is a general flaw in state energy planning that applies not just to nuclear, but to coal and other fuels. If we're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions dramatically and ramp up renewables in a huge way, we're talking about a major transition in a system that touches people's lives in so many different ways. And we need to be sensitive to this. And we need to plan for a just transition that tries to mitigate any harms to individuals and communities that currently rely on fossil fuels and the nuclear industries. And we don't really see any talk about a transition and how to help communities move from one fuel to another in this plan. Okay, so what's next? Well, here's what I think we should do. I think we need to keep planning. We need to push for better state energy planning, and in addition, we need to muster our own resources to do planning ourselves. I spoke earlier about the value of research in helping me become a better activist and helping people understand what's possible. I think good information is really important, and we can't design and advocate for good policy without it. The work of the Solutions Project is just the beginning of what's needed in New York. There are so many questions that need to be answered. And so we're pushing New York State to undertake a comprehensive renewable energy study that would build on the work of the Solutions Project and other researchers. And it would sort of look at the different options for and different scenarios for renewable energy mixes in New York and compare them and talk about the pros and cons of them. And it would also add in the economic justice and energy democracy dimensions into planning so that we can understand how better to go about a transition that's sensitive to the needs and vulnerabilities of low-income people and promote more democratic and distributed control over energy production. We also have to build a mass movement for a renewable energy transition. It should be the counterpart to the anti-fracking movement. We need to bring as much fervor as we've brought to the anti-fracking fight to the fight for renewable energy. And part of that is demonstrating that these options are viable. We're still at that phase where people still don't quite believe it's possible. And people need to believe it, and they need to see it before they will. This is something people in your county are doing really well. You have Solar Tompkins that's entering its second year. It's incredible, and it's a model that's spreading across the state. There's Southern Tier Solar Works. We're getting one launched in Syracuse as well. So this is really important to build and to learn from the building. That's our own, personal research. As we learn how we're going to implement these systems, we'll learn about the obstacles and then be able to advocate to overcome them. Then we need to keep fighting the polluters. We cannot let them build any more infrastructure or get any subsidies for this old, antiquated system. The only infrastructure we should be subsidizing is stuff that's going to help us in this renewable energy transition. So that means the anti-fracking fight has to keep fighting pipelines and compressor stations. The anti-nuclear activists have to fight subsidies. And we also should take this fight about subsidies for natural gas in space heating to the state. I don't know if a group is doing that yet, but I think we should do that. We need to stay informed about state policies that could help or hurt renewables and show up and speak out at the legislature, at the Public Service Commission. As these policies get talked about, we need to be there commenting at public hearings and participating in public comment processes. And then finally, we need to build alliances and solidarity across different arms of the environmental and energy-related movements so that we can work together. We're undertaking a major transition here. We need to work on so many different levels and with many different sectors of society to bring about this change that we so urgently need. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you so much, and I don't know if anybody's going to do this, so hopefully we can also give a round of applause to the organizers of this event who did an amazing job. Maybe you could stand up.